Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Roberts. Welcome to the June 21st edition of Effective, Efficient, Affordable, and above all accountable to you, the show that is going to reintroduce you to the 3 R's, and they are not reading, writing, and arithmetic. We are joined this evening once again by John Gorga. John, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good to see you. As those of you who know this program well, you know that if John is here, we are talking budgets. Let us set the scene for you for this evening's program. This past Monday was held the town meeting at the Gilbert School. The town meeting was held to send the budget to referendum. Mark your calendars, ladies and gentlemen. The referendum will be Saturday, July the 21st, 8 to 8 at the Pearson School. Mark your calendars. For those of you who intend or who may be out of town that day, get in your application for an absentee ballot immediately. Call the town hall, call the town clerk, do it at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We do not want a repeat of the last referendum where many of you who asked for absentee ballots received them after the counting was well and truly done. That is just not helpful to the process. If you're planning on being absentee, ask for your ballot now. Get it done and be ready.
Let me interject one thing. You can go down to the town hall, you can pick up the absentee ballot application, you can fill it out, and you can actually get the ballot right then and there, go in the back room and vote. Say you're not going to be here on a Saturday, you can do it right up to the Friday before, Friday noon, the 20th. So you can vote in one fell swoop if you would like. You can go in, get the application, fill the application out, turn it into the clerk or the assistant clerk, Cheryl Carrier, and she will print it up for you. You take it, you go in the back room, you vote, you turn it in right then and there. So you can reduce the number of trips, so you can be effective and efficient, starting right there.
Or alternatively, just call town hall and they will mail you one. But
they will mail you the application,
which you mail back, and then they mail you a ballot and you mail that back.
Okay.
So for all of that to take place, you need to get your phone call in pretty soon.
But I will say this, you will have approximately, to go through that cycle, you will have about 1 week prior to the Saturday referendum to do it and to be able to get your ballot in on time.
So that's the mechanic for voting if you cannot be here on Saturday, the 21st of July, between 8 and 8 at the Pearson School. Now, 3 very interesting things happened at the town meeting this past Monday. The first was that no one could really bring themselves to speak in favor of the budget. Mimi Valio, speaking for the Board of Education, the closest she got for supporting the budget was to say, because the budget is so very large, or more specifically, because the school budget is so very large, it is very important that we have the capacity to give a very large pay raise to the superintendent. The logic of that was somewhat lost on me. Glenn Zay suggested that if you want roads and sewers, you need to pay for them. He was seemingly oblivious to the fact that there are no sewer expenditures in this budget, and probably the only person around who will benefit from the very little road work that will be done will be myself as a daily user of Newfield Road. Marianne Welcome stood up and simply said that she would not support any lower budget. And John stood up, and I'll let John tell you himself what he said.
My history with Winsted goes back many, many years. In essence, that I've been here for it all. And we tend to have overcapacity in just about everything. And my statement was we have a 6 million gallon a day water filtration plant. It is sitting in place, rotting away, because we're using probably 900,000 gallons a day. And to add insult to injury, you have 3 2 million gallon a day filters in the plant for the 6 million capacity, but you essentially have a holding tank of approximately 1 million gallons, and the holding tank acts as a buffer, a time buffer between the chlorination process, one of the final processes for the water, and it going to the public. There has to be a holding period. So even if you were doing 6 million gallons a day, you couldn't push it through the plant anyway. I made another statement that in 30 years since the sewer plant has been built, we're probably stretching it if we say we're doing 1 million gallons a day. These are the things that really add costs, the electricity, the everything that runs motors, processes, material, people, is being consumed in the user base while it is in a separate budget, pays for these things, and you have a user base that's too small for the capacity of the plants. The other analogy is, as we keep shrinking, as we keep getting older, the capacity of the schools is tremendously large, and the grade coming in, the kindergarten coming in, is approximately 80 kids. By the time it gets to high school, it'll probably be around 50. I mean, are you going to run a high school with 200 kids? You have to look at pairing with partners, with consolidating, and going forward instead of a myopic view where it's going to be made and done in Winsted with partners.
So the first odd thing about Monday, no one could bring themselves to actually, truly speak in favor of the budget. The second odd thing, quite frankly, was that most of the commentary that took place, all four speakers, only one really approached this from the perspective of what is good or bad for the community, and that was John. He's just explained to you that from his perspective, any budget which doesn't tailor the services and the investments and the spending that we have before us to our actual capacity to afford it is not going to be a real good, long-lasting budget. Marianne Welcome came sort of close to this idea of a community-oriented rationale for her view. Her view was that she could not support a different budget, a lower budget, because it would go against everything that in her mind this community stands for. That is a noble sentiment. Marianne said that this community should stand for giving away taxpayer dollars to worthy causes. Whether it be the visiting nurses, whether it be the chore folks, whoever it may be, the essence of Winsted to Marianne, the essence of the budget, the essence of what it means to be a community, is the ability to give away taxpayer dollars. And if the budget doesn't allow you to do that, then that is betrayal of everything that the community stands for. Now, as I say, that is a noble view. It is a reasoned view. It's not a view that I happen to agree with.
Well, let's put this in perspective. I mean, you're talking, her examples were $300,000 of a $30 million budget.
As I say,
you're not attacking the problem.
Right.
You're saying, well, we're going to take sports away from the kids because we don't want to go to one superintendent.
Right.
You're attacking, such a small piece of the budget. That's not the problem.
It is, as they say, the pimple on the hind of the rhinoceros. But yet it's a principled pimple, and we have to recognize it as such. Mimi, on behalf of the schools, I think from her perspective, the fact that approving or supporting this budget would well and truly take off folks like Ken Fracasso and James Roberts is reason enough for her to support the budget. And Glenn Zay, I guess, likes to think about the budget in terms of individual desires. Do you, as an individual, want the road outside your house fixed? Forgetting that the individual desires of each and any citizen are not really what government is about. Government is about what's good for the community. So number one, people could not bring themselves to support, or at least to talk in support of the budget. Number two, with the exception of John here, no one could bring themselves to explain their position in terms of what is good for the community. And number three, there's the date of the referendum itself. As we said at the outset, the referendum will be Saturday, July 21st. There was an effort to make it the Tuesday before that, the soonest possible date. What is the magic about that Tuesday? Quite frankly, it limits the opportunity for people to do their research and arrive at a sensible view. And secondly, it's a Tuesday. It's not a weekend. It means that those of you who actually work during the week, those of you who are perhaps weekenders and are not here, would not have the opportunity to vote. This was a very simple effort to try and limit those who might vote at the next referendum. And from my perspective, ladies and gentlemen, that is simply wrong. We may argue about what the Charter says as to who can vote, but once you've accepted who is eligible to vote, we must move heaven and earth to ensure that no impediment is placed in their ability to vote. To his credit, even the town manager voted for Saturday. That's not the town manager saying, I don't support the selectmen, or the town manager saying, I don't support the Board of Education. That's the town manager saying the right thing, the proper thing, is to ensure that as many eligible voters have the opportunity to vote. That's the way it should be, ladies and gentlemen. So that was the Monday meeting. Let's restate the problem. What is the problem that we face in this community? What is the problem that we are trying to craft this as a foundation budget to achieve? John, how would you define the problem that we face?
We have much too much capacity, as I stated earlier, right across the board, number one. Number two, we're graying. We're becoming an older community with less and less kids. And if you look at the numbers over the last 5 years, we're now down to 1,100 kids in the entire school system. Number three, there is really, with this economy, no revenue generation going on in the town within the tax base. There's no building, there's no construction, there's no improvements per se to support the increases that everybody wants to see. And really, it's getting worse, and it's going to be exacerbated by the reval. The mayor got up and stated that, well, we're going to have a phase-in of decreases. Well, the thing that you want to do, and what is killing the town, is you have much too much tax on the old town. It doesn't have enough traffic flow. It doesn't have enough pedestrian traffic in the commercial sector to support the cost structure, whether it's heat, light, taxes, insurance, to support the building. So many of them are empty or filled with things that just generate minimal revenue. If you don't reverse this, and reverse it quickly, you'll lose not only the downtown, but you'll lose the rest of the old town. We continue to build subsidized housing. We are approaching 20% of the units in town subsidized, where most other communities are 3 to 4%. You're so far out of balance with all your metrics, you can't continue going on like we're doing.
So let me put that slightly differently. The problem, as I see it, is that the cost of the current services, the services that you, the community, have come to expect, simply exceeds the ability of the current tax base to pay it. That is a problem that is getting worse over the time, as witnessed by the reval. And the failure, each year that we fail to address it, the speed at which it gets worse will increase.
The reval, and this is the thing, you will see a change to a statute on increase or phasing in an increase or decrease. And either way, okay, if it is a decrease, you will leave let's take my house. My house is appraised in 2007 at $150,000. If you say it's going to go down by 50%, it will be appraised this time around at $75,000 to $85,000. It roughly has $2,600, $2,700 worth of taxes on it. Even at $150,000, you're looking at 3%. A piece of property effectively managed by the town and by the owner will prosper if it has a tax rate of 1.25%. Anything over that, it becomes unbearable. If you're going to leave that same tax structure in place and reduce it by 20% per year down to the $75,000, people are going to walk away from the property. I mean, you're talking about paying, 6 to 10% per year on a piece of property that has been cut in half in value.
And for a homeowner like John, there is some point at which he will continue to pay taxes which are artificially high. But for a commercial landlord who is in this for simply a return on equity, there is no time frame during which they will pay an uneconomic tax rate. Well, that just doesn't work for them.
They don't have a vested interest in the building. Right. They've financed it.
They can't.
They have a negative cash flow, and the cash flow gets worse because they're paying a ridiculous tax, a property tax, on a property that's not worth anything anymore. And if you look at, as I said earlier, the over 50% of your units are rental units.
Right.
So you're going to see a collapse of your tax base. You're going to see a ton of properties just vacated or abandoned, and that is going to be the makeup is going to be thrown on the lake in Winchester anyway.
So let's again just be very clear here. What does the phased reval actually mean? In John's case, if we truly believe that his home is going to drop in value from 150 to something like $75,000 or $85,000, he will nevertheless be paying a full tax load, not on 150, but on 135.
When it's only worth 75?
When it's only worth 75. He will be paying twice as much in tax as he should. That's point number one. Point number two, he will actually be paying part of my tax bill. Because what John will effectively be doing is subsidizing the tax bills of those of us who live outside in the country on the lakes. Now, speaking selfishly, as an individual, if John is willing to pay my property taxes, I'm all in favor of that. But as a member of this community, that is not a sustainable thing. That is not a right thing. It's not fair to say to John, not only are you going to pay too much in taxes on your own property, but effectively you're going to subsidize the taxes on everybody else's properties. Yeah. There are people on the Board of Education, for example, people with substantial properties, horse owners, Doc Dutton, Yumi Value, Chris Royer and family. You know, if you want downtown to pay the very expensive horse feed bills for the people who live on large properties outside, let's be honest, let's just say that. Let's not couch it as a phased-in reval, which supposedly will eliminate all of our problems. But that's not the only issue with the reval, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just a question that John would be paying too much taxes, that John would be paying part of my taxes. I, as someone on the outside of town, will be looking at an automatic tax increase each and every year for the next 5 years, irrespective of what happens with the budget. Because that's the phase-in. My taxes, by definition, will of necessity go up every single year, irrespective of what happens with the budget. And that is no way to run a town. You can't expect a town to function well, you can't expect citizens to buy into the long-term goals of a community if their interests are not aligned with what is happening. If their tax bills are going up irrespective of what's happening, that's a bad arrangement. The phased reval doesn't work, plain and simple.
And let's penalize somebody that invests in the community. If a phased reval is for people that have gone through the reval. If you bring anybody into the community that wants to develop anything, they go right on the books at the higher rate, paying an exorbitant price. So how do you bring people in to reinvest in your community, take something, rehab it, or do something else, and have them pay an exorbitant rate?
And once again, as unfair as it is for citizens, for residents, it is even worse for businesses. As John says, anyone making an investment today, business-wise, is gonna be punished versus everyone else, and that is no way to attract businesses, to attract investment that we so desperately need to fix the problem at the heart of the reval. The problem, let's face it, the problem is the decline in our downtown neighborhoods and the collapse of our downtown commercial district. And that problem can only be fixed by bringing in investment. And if we craft a solution to the reval which disincentivizes investment, we've cut off our nose to spite our face.
That's correct.
So what is the answer, ladies and gentlemen? What should the budget be doing? What should the tenor of the Selectmen's speechifying be? Where should the Board of Education be in all of this? The answer is the 3 R's. And as I said at the outset, it isn't reading, writing, and arithmetic. John, the 3 R's.
It's reduce, it's restructure, it's reinvest. You're going to have to come to a consensus between the Board of Ed, the Board of Selectmen, and the town that you can no longer sustain what you're trying to do, and you're going to have to reduce.
And the order of those words is important, ladies and gentlemen. You reduce, first of all. Reduce is your emergency rescue operation. It is get the spending in line with our means, get it in line with our means today. As John mentioned before we went on air, yet another municipal bankruptcy this week, Stockton, California.
And they'll keep coming. And the core thing affecting Stockton was the decline in real estate values and the debt.
Yeah, I mean, towns go bankrupt really for 2 reasons. Number one, because they have ongoing costs, usually benefit costs, out of line with their ability to raise taxes. And issue number two is they incur costs usually to build new things on a build and they will come type principle. Build a new school, build a new parking garage, build a new sewer plant. If we make it new and pretty, people will come. Well, guess what? When the people don't come, when no one shows up to pay the bill, the town goes bankrupt. So the first step in the process has to be reduce. It has to be rescue. The one thing that we can do overnight is to cut services, to cut the cost of services. The next step is restructure. The overnight change is reduce, eliminate, cut. The interim change is restructure, which is you take the services that remain and you achieve the same goals, you provide the same service, but more efficiently. You can't do that until you've taken the first step, which is to cut that which we simply cannot afford under any circumstance whatsoever. And once you've cut, and once you've restructured what remains, you free up cash flow, you create cash flow to spend on new things. Whether that's a new school, whether that in the immediate term is investment in the downtown, in business, in commerce.
Exactly. I mean, it's a restructuring process that private corporations have gone through many, many times through bankruptcy court. It is something that is going to have to be addressed in the public sector as more and more towns become strapped for cash. In Stockton's case, California has a little bit different tax structure in a sense that they assess a piece of property and then they multiply it by, I believe it's 1.25% to get a revenue.
Right.
Well, the town of Stockton sees an immediate drop in revenue because they don't have the mill rate to manipulate such as we in Connecticut do. They see an immediate drop in revenue. They can't pay their benefit structures and they can't pay their debt service. So it all comes to a head very quickly and collapses. What you're doing here is prolonging it in the sense that you're trying to extract the same amount of dollars out of a tax base that is probably going to collapse by 20% from 800 million to 600 million. And you're trying to extract the same dollars, but the property is worth less, so it becomes burdened higher and people walk away from it.
So in summary, ladies and gentlemen, reduce, restructure, reinvest. What are a couple of examples of these programs, these ideas, these incentives? Reduce, the easiest one is to reduce, to take away the cost of family benefits. No one is saying that any employee shouldn't be able to get insurance for their wife and their children. They should. The question is, should the town pay for it? And the town quite simply can't afford it. The town can negotiate a group rate which the employee can pay on his own behalf for family benefits in much the same way as you do in your own lives. That's one thing that we can reduce.
And by the way, that's the way the state of Connecticut works. My wife is a state of Connecticut employee. She is insured by the state of Connecticut, but for myself or for our kids, she has to pay.
Right.
And the second part of it is even now when both children are over 18, not only does she have to pay, but there is an added cost between 18 and 26 if they're in school, and she pays a COBRA on top of that. So it becomes substantial. I mean, we're insured, but we pay a substantial amount of money outside of my wife to do that.
And this is not being mean, ladies and gentlemen. This is simply what we need to do. Other things that we can do to reduce cost overnight: close a school, close an empty school. That's something you can do and reduce cost overnight. Restructuring. What do we mean by restructuring? Well, shared services. As John has brought up many times, you all voted to combine the finance staffs of town and schools. Well, do it. That's a restructuring move that won't happen overnight, but can happen in relatively short order and will provide a service more efficiently.
And you save on computer costs, you save on software costs, you save on personnel costs, and these are all back office costs that are not affecting the daily services being provided to the residents of the town.
But that restructuring is a sort of a middle term foundational step to getting the town back on the road to prosperity. Step number 1, cut your costs overnight. Step number 2, begin to take the incremental steps to reorder the way the town works to make it work more efficiently. And reinvestment, I think we all know what reinvestment is. It's tax incentives to bring investment back to town, to bring revitalization of homes, to bring new businesses. It may be a new school in time. It's just not a new school right now.
Right. The biggest thing, and when you look at how communities such as Baltimore, such as Providence, have rehabilitated neighborhoods, they have offered tax incentives for people to come in and be owner-occupiers of the property, whether it be abatement of property taxes for so many years, 3 to 5 years, or in some cases where cities have local income taxes, they have stated that they will abate the income tax on businesses that relocate to the town for so many years. There's all sorts of things you can do, but you can't put any more tax on the structures and expect people to make investments and then in 5 years flip it again and have, you know, big, huge steps in what they see. Their income doesn't change that rapidly.
Nor can you spend money on things that do not produce incremental tax.
Right.
So in summary, Saturday, July 21st, 8 to 8, Pearson School, referendum for the budget. If you want to vote absentee, go down to Town Hall, fill out the paperwork, or call Town Hall immediately and have the paperwork sent to you. Reval, symptom of the problem, phasing it is not a solution to the problem. If Mike Renzullo, as a downtown property owner, wants to pay my taxes, and I don't own any horses, full disclosure, but if Mike Renzullo wants to pay my taxes, I am all in favor of that as an individual. But I recognize that that is not the answer to what ails our community. The answer is the 3 R's, and we will explore the 3 R's in greater detail in the next couple of shows as we approach the referendum. With that, ladies and gentlemen, good night.
Good night. Thank you.
And we will see you next week.